Jumpstart Your Joy is a podcast that looks at the inspiration, intention, and action that you could take in your everyday to bring more joy into your life. This is Paula Jenkins. Let's get on to the show. Welcome to Jumpstart Your Joy. This week on the show, I am honored to be joined by the remarkable Illana Burk. She is a coach and a consultant with a passion for helping small businesses, entrepreneurs, and solopreneurs thrive. I first found Illana through her podcast, which is Good Business with Illana Burk, and then had the pleasure of learning more about her through her program, which is a small business incubator, which has been a lot of fun. She also does the Good Business Workshop, and she also runs Go for the No, which you will hear about in this episode. I'm so excited to have her here, and I think you'll just love the way that she takes a fresh approach to having a business in this day and age, which she bases on your values and what's important to you over any of the things that the big gurus like to tell us. Before we get to the show, I want to wish you all a very warm welcome and say thanks so much for tuning in and for being here and for sharing Jumpstart Your Joy with your friends and fellow business folks. It is such a treat to be doing this show. If you are new or you have questions or you want to learn more, you can find everything you need to know over at jumpstartyourjoy.com. And this episode will be on the homepage this week or for the next couple weeks. You could also tap through on your mobile device and find the show notes right there. And there will be links in both places to Illana's work and her podcast and some of the things we're talking about. And maybe a screenshot from the time I heard back from Betty White. I also want to share, if you live in the San Francisco Bay Area, there is the opportunity to join me for an in-person retreat, and it is called Compassion Quest. And we will be looking at how to bring more joy into your life through self-care and self-compassion, and I'm really excited about it. It will be Saturday, August 17th, and it will be at San Damiano Retreat, which is in Danville, California. I will put the link for you to sign up. There's still spots available. Are actually already sold out once. And they put us in a bigger room. So if you want to join us, I would love to see you there. I'm very excited to just have Illana come on this conversation when I've gone back to edit it. There's so much joy and laughter and hilarity in this that I think you guys are all going to get a good kick out of it. Even if you're not a small business owner, there are a few great jokes and stories in here that I think will appeal to everyone. So welcome to the show, Illana.
Thank you so much for having me, Paula. You are just one of my favorite people. I'm so excited to be here.
If you could see me, I'm kind of fangirling out because it really did start as me listening to your podcast. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this woman's the coolest. And then I'm like,
I
I'm
am the
gonna,
coolest.
yeah,
It's true.
this is absolutely the truth. Okay, well, so before we get into what you do and all that, would you like to share with us what were your earliest sparks of joy as a child or what brought you joy as a kid?
I love that you asked this question because it was incredibly difficult. It's a really hard one to answer. And for how many times I have done podcast interviews, and you know me well, I don't get stumped easily. And this seems like a really dumb question to get stumped on, but but there I am. And I knew you were going to ask after listening to other episodes and everything. I'm like, she's going to ask me the three things, and I don't.
Oh no.
Okay, so here's what I came up with. Because I was the kid that, I was starting businesses in second grade. So it shouldn't surprise you that I wasn't a particularly playful child. I was a really serious kid. So joy wasn't my childhood. But what I came up with, the three things that did definitely bring me joy and made me forget the hardness of growing up in the 80s, 80s
Yeah.
parents. I was a dancer for 18 years and
Oh my gosh.
I could dance and was in gymnastics almost before I could walk. And so dance was a really big escape for me, and that was definitely joyful and something I really really loved. And I almost went professional. I was a dancer until I was almost 20, and then a bunch of
Wow.
injuries kind of ended that. Okay, so dancing, art was the other thing. My mom was an artist, so we didn't always have enough bread in the fridge, but we always had art supplies.
Yeah.
so, so I did a lot of art as a kid. And then the other thing is I loved movies when I was a kid. That was my big escape. I loved watching movies. And we didn't have cable. I grew up in the sticks. So They literally we didn't have cable because it wasn't available when I grew up.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
um,
totally. Yeah.
I watched a lot of movies, like, over and over again, and so that was kinda my happy place. So, yeah, that's those are my earliest memories of joy.
I love it. I mean, I love that you came up with stuff. A lot of people, I mean, the top 5 are creativity. A lot of kids dive into books, playing outside, playing with friends, and animals. Those are the tops. So let's talk. I mean, this is interesting. I didn't realize you were a dancer. This is all very cool. How did you go from being that version of Alana that we've heard of to
Uh-huh.
now being someone who is this mentor, coach, consultant, helping people who, I mean, you do a great job in this space of people that are kind of somebody told me that solopreneur was a dirty word. I don't know about that.
I don't think it's a dirty word.
So how did you get into that space? What was your path like?
I'll try to make this as concise as possible 'cause it's a winding road. We could, like that could just be
Yeah.
the whole episode is Alana's
Yeah.
journey from dancer to business mentor in 4,724 steps. No, okay, so the basics are, I was raised by a salesman and an entrepreneur. And
Mm.
so I never like had that kind of upbringing of my parents got dressed in the morning and went to work. Like my mom was a sign painter and my dad was a timeshare salesman. So, entrepreneurship seemed like the only path. Like you start your own thing was sort of the only thing I ever really learned how to do or thought about doing. So that was kind of thing number one. But my education, my undergrad was in performance and education. And I thought I was gonna be a teacher for a long time because I really like teaching. So that kind of like, segued into what I do now. But until my favorite teacher from high school told me that I was crazy for wanting to become a teacher. I went to like tell him and I was having this like moment. I'm like, Mr. Nixon, I'm gonna follow in your footsteps and I'm gonna be a teacher too. And he was like, his literal words were, you gotta be fucking kidding me. He's like, I thought I taught you better than that.
Oh no.
So there went my plan to be a junior high school teacher. And I was kind of, I floundered and trying to figure out what I wanted to do next and floundered around for a little bit between regular undergrad and graduate school. And I was either going to go for a sociology master's or an MBA in sustainable enterprise. And the pragmatic side of me won out. So
Hmm.
I went for an MBA in sustainable enterprise. And at the time, it was called a Green MBA. And I thought that I was getting really interested in sustainability. It was in, 2005 ish, something like that, when green business was like a brand new thing that not too many people were talking about. And I thought it was really fascinating. And I thought that there was a lot of change that could be made from a commerce standpoint. So that's the route I took. And so that kind of put me on the business track.
Yeah.
But I still really wanted to be more independent coming out of that. I had a fancy job as a sales manager for a coffee company that I was traveling all over and doing the fancy executive thing while I was in grad
Yeah.
school and realized in 2 years that that was very much not for me. that,
Yeah.
that working that hard towards someone else's dream was not my bag.
Yeah.
Uh, and the toxic work environment simply wasn't how I wanted to spend my life. So that was the kind of short answer to that question. That was the short version. Yeah.
And next week on the show, no, I'm just
Right.
kidding.
Next week.
Alana will be back. There's
Right.
3 episodes to no, I'm just
We'll
kidding.
we'll
Thank
talk
you
about
for
the
thank
agency years.
well, but that's interesting because
Mhm,
do you find that a lot of us, meaning us entrepreneurs,
mhm.
solopreneurs even, do I think a lot of us come from some sort of an agency background. Do you find that to be true?
Well, yes and no. I mean,
Mhm.
I think the intention of what you mean, correct me if I'm wrong here. I don't want to speak for
Yeah.
you, but like, is that people start as service providers in some way?
Yeah.
Like they come
Mhm.
from some sort of, I do a service, I'm good at a thing, I do a service. And then that sort of evolves into being more independent and more of a leader and more of a business owner at some point.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you're saying?
Sure, yeah, yeah. I mean, quite literally for me, I was in ad agencies for like almost 20 years. But then I saw, I mean, and I mean this in the best of ways, but that like
Mhm.
very creative people often find themselves in ad agencies and they're doing
Yeah.
amazing work, but they're doing it for someone else. And my whole aha moment became that like I was leading retreats on the weekend, but then I was going into an ad agency to sell people stuff. I worked on Visa. And so I'm telling you to
Yeah.
go into debt all week. And then I'm telling you, let it go. I'm Elsa. I mean, Elsa came after that. But like,
I'm definitely picturing you in the blue dress and the
I'm
whole
making a fractal.
let it go.
Anyway, we both literally clearly have children of an
We
age that
do.
watch
We
that.
do. Yeah.
So, but I think it's interesting how you kind of have that. Probably a lot of us have had that aha moment. Like you even said that you didn't want to be working for somebody else's dream. And
Yeah.
I was so upset that like I was trying to sell people and basically going into debit for their whole life for this aspirational look or feel. And that was just so absurd. I think there is that aha moment with a lot of solopreneurs that they're like, I could do this and not be within the system. I
Yeah.
could be feral and do this.
I like that.
That's my word of the summer.
Let's come up with a new word. I think feralpreneur. That can replace solopreneur.
Thank you.
We are
You heard it here,
feralpreneurs.
people.
I like it.
We are
You heard it
yeah.
here first. I kind of dig that. Now I want to go buy the domain. Shit.
Oh, no. Please include me somehow in this, at least in the ongoing discussion of
Jumpstart your feral. That can be your next podcast.
oh, no.
I like it.
Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
I do describe myself as being far too feral to go back to like, I think I would create
Mhm.
havoc,
Yeah.
within a normal working environment.
Yeah. I think
Um,
that to your point about working in agencies, like that kind of environment, agencies are a trip. I do think that's really true now that I understand what you meant. Like
yeah.
they're creative environments. They're full of like people who generally studied creative things, and then there's like this whole sales aspect mixed with a bunch of creatives. So you learn, you cross pollinate those things. So you learn a lot and then go, oh, wow, I can probably do a lot of other people's jobs, and then,
Yes.
so I think that that's what breeds entrepreneurial spirit out of that. Cause it's like, you find out that you are more talented in a lot of different areas. And if that's the way it strikes you, I think that striking out on your own is a pretty natural next step because it is downright painful to do good work for shitty things. And that's
Oh, yeah.
probably why I am independent. I can't anymore. I can't. I
Yeah.
definitely, oh my God, the thought of working for somebody else at this point in my life and career, there's no way.
Yep.
Definitely
Feralpreneur
feral.
right here.
Feral. Yeah,
Oh my
I like it.
goodness, I love this too. I'm way too delighted about feralpreneur. I'm
Yeah,
glad
me too.
that you've come
I'm
up with
sticking
this.
with it.
So maybe that's an interesting spot though, because there's a couple things that come from working for the man. Please, someone cue the Taylor Swift song and I'll dance to it. But there's something about having people out there getting the business. Then they're like saying, well, these are the next projects. And all I have to do is figure out how to do them. And then
Mhm.
everybody's got a role. But when that all comes down to you're the one doing it all, where do you see us getting stuck? What are the top few stuck spots that you see?
I don't actually think the stuck spots change all that much
Mm.
unless you do a lot of work early in your business, like on yourself. I think stuck
Ooh.
spots tend to just keep staying the same. It's just the scale gets bigger, the stakes get higher when there's more money on the line. But that's not even really true because a lot of times when you are just getting started, the stakes are really, really high because you're just trying to pay rent or your
Mhm.
mortgage or something. So the stakes feel even higher. So it just kind of shifts. I have a new client right now that like she has an income that many of my other clients would kill to have. She's making quite a lot and is stuck on the exact same things as my newbie clients.
Yeah.
So those stuck areas I think have way more to do with our interpersonal relationships with ourselves than they do with any like actual business tactical stuff because after doing this for 15 years, I have coached nearly 500 people over that time and probably done group programs of way more. But the running theme is that we tell ourselves these stories that stop us, that a lot of times it's something like I tried Twitter and it didn't work for me. Or I opened TikTok once and it was terrible, so I never opened it again and I can't do that.
Yeah.
Or I don't want to have a long-term program because what if the person doesn't like what we're doing and then I'm stuck with them? It's these. So then these things that are like that have so much more to do with the stories that they're telling themselves about their own capacity than they do with any level of reality, you know? And I mean, I shouldn't say that because it's real for them. Those stuck points
Mhm.
are real for them, but it's actually pretty amazing what happens when you kind of go like, "Hey, maybe that's not true." Like,
Yeah.
"Hey, maybe you're getting in your own way, and maybe that's something that's an easier fix than you thought." Sometimes it really is that simple, and then so many more things become possible. So I think that a lot of times this day and age, people get stuck on being really precious, especially about promotion, like, and the outlets that they
Mm,
choose. I won't do
yeah.
this because X. Especially in my world, I deal with people that are very good-hearted, highly ethical business owners who are like me, completely unwilling to bend on their values to sell more shit. My work with people a lot of the time is to help them figure out where compromises are reasonable, because ethics are not black and white, and nothing is. There is no right and wrong. There's just a whole lot of degrees of gray and a whole bunch of different perspectives. A lot of my work is helping people through the stop points that are looking at things from only one perspective. Facebook ads are a really good example. You know, I don't want to give my money to Zuckerberg. How many times do we hear that stuff? He's selling our data. It's all terrible. Well, they're typing those words on Facebook. And it's like,
Yes.
okay, you're already making some compromises here. We all are. If more people knew about me and my business is well suited for Facebook ads and my entire market is sitting on Facebook, maybe it's worth a small compromise to give more than just my attention to Facebook. I will give a little money to Facebook because it will pay me back in my reach expanding, which will give me an opportunity to say more things to more people and help more people. Like, there has to
Yeah.
be little spaces where we compromise with our eyes open. And I think a lot of people compromise with their eyes closed. So, understanding what you're doing it with your eyes open and looking for ways to mitigate any damage you're creating, that's an ethical choice. But ethics are complicated. So, those good-hearted people that come to me all the time are like, I really want to get the word out, but I literally have a problem with every possible way I could do that.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And we live in these exceptional times where we have so many outlets and so many ways that communication has been democratized. There's so many
Right.
more ways to do things, which is going to require a stretch. So the stuck points are always have to do with a way in which someone needs to stretch and they have decided that they're unwilling to, but they want the
Mhm.
outcome that comes from the stretch. So I'd say 3/4 of my work is helping them learn to stretch a lot in all kinds of ways. So, and feel safe doing it.
Well, and I think podcasting,
Mhm.
since that's what I do and consult on, like, it's often the same. I mean, it is a
Yeah.
long tail game, and
Mhm.
you may or may not see obvious lift from your podcast. And people don't always
Mhm.
like that answer, especially if they're paying to have it produced or put out. In the example of one of my clients, she's a brick and mortar person. She's a
Mhm.
fertility doctor. You can't get much more brick and mortar. And she's, gone all in on a lot of the marketing pieces, and she's seen a lot of lift.
Mhm.
It's hard to track this stuff right now. It might be easier as we go forward, but it's
Mhm.
hard to say exactly where the things come from and the people come from, but you can see they're showing up and they're having the
Yeah.
babies. So it's working. It's working.
You know, one of the things that, like, is really disappointing, I think, and maybe one of the things that separates solopreneurs from entrepreneurs too, is, like, there's a lot of really good-hearted people, especially, like, healers, artists, people who, like, everybody said, "You're really good at this, you should do it for a living." And they're like, "Yeah, I
Yes.
totally will." And so they do, and they get their business cards printed, and they start out, and then they get the, like, incredibly disappointing and, like, painful moment where they realize they have to actually own a business. Like, they
Yeah.
don't get to just do acupuncture all day. They might get to do acupuncture for, like, 40% of their time, and the rest of the time is gonna be spent doing billing and accounting and creating images for their social media and posting on social media and marketing and compliance and all of these other things that don't get taught to people before they embark on being
Mhm.
like going it alone and going solo. It's going
And
to take
then
longer and cost more than anybody thinks. to be a real business
Yes.
owner. Solopreneurs are basically creating a job for themselves. It's a
Yeah.
job that they have a little more control over, but they're creating a job for themselves that's contingent on them showing up every day and doing the work. They can't, go away for 6 months and the business still functions because it's not really a company. But,
Yeah. I
entrepreneurs are
love that
going,
you're un
I'm starting a company. It's a whole different thing.
yeah. Yeah, I love that you're unpacking that because I think it's true. And maybe that's also the little bit of the difference between a mindset of how you get into if you wanna grow, I think it's hard to you can't grow too far past being a solopreneur because you're exchanging, for the most part,
Mhm.
hours for work for
Yeah.
money, and there's only so much of that time. But
Yeah.
I think you're right, if you have an entrepreneurial mindset of it, then that's probably when you're starting to hire someone because you realize,
Mhm.
"I can grow faster if I'm actually putting some resources towards this,
Yeah.
and I don't have to be the one that does it all."
There was a time in my business where I wanted things to get really big, where I wanted to scale and be a company, and I did it. I had, 10 designers working for me and I had a creative digital agency for a lot of years. And it nearly broke me. I realized I didn't get to do any of the fun things that I like doing. And
Mhm.
I spent all of my time navigating managing people, which I'm fine at, but that's not how I want to spend my time. I ended up doing
Yeah.
sales and management and nothing else, which are the 2 things that I like least.
Yeah.
So, to me, it became I constricted everything. I made my whole business smaller and boiled it down to what's enough and boiled it down to something really simple that I could get my arms around that requires a very small team and that I can still make a really good living at and that I can save enough to have money in the bank and be really comfortable and happy and use what I know to help other people do the same thing. And it's now I consult with bigger companies, I consult with bigger leaders, and a lot of what I do a lot of the time now is helping people understand that they don't have to keep up with the Joneses, that
Yeah.
scaling and growing and getting bigger is not actually a necessity. It's
Yeah.
perfectly okay to just be enough and want enough and have enough and be comfortable with enough. But in order to get to enough, you have to make peace with self-promotion, being a business owner, and you know,
Right.
there's all these things that are still required of you to get to that point. But you don't have to scale up into a company if you don't want to. But you do
Yeah.
have to get over those hurdles of, I don't want to be on TikTok. I don't want to be on
Yeah, just get
Instagram.
over
They're
it.
all
Yeah.
evil.
They're
Maybe,
not.
maybe not.
They're
I
not.
don't know.
There's something really good right in there that I resonate with because it goes back to the your purpose. I mean, I would start with people that are starting podcasts the same way of like,
Mhm.
what's the why? Because for me, it was I saw my friends who were teachers and they had the summer off with their kids. And
Mhm.
that initially was why I was like, no, I want to get to that point where I can be flexible enough that I can be there for the things that matter. That
Mhm.
one of those being my son. Now my mom's, kind of in that mix because she needs a little more help. But like, and I think once you realize that, then you start to, or at least I started to question. So really, I mean, I don't need that much. Like I do, but I don't. And I
Yeah.
think there's something very dangerous out there with some of the bigger guru type, small business folk that are like,
Mhm.
how to get to 7 figures. Like, why are we even talking about 7 figures at this how did we go from, like, 6 to 7? It seems like it was in 1 minute, and then
I
somehow we
know.
were done with talking about 6, and now we're only about 7 figures.
And I am all for money. I love money. Money good. I love money.
Yes.
But there's more important things. And like, how do you make 7 figures? How many compromises do you have to make 7 figures? How far do you have to detach yourself from the actual experience of your customers and clients in order to make that kind of money? Like,
Mm.
how much do you have to rationalize?
Ugh.
But I did love what
Yeah.
you said. I wanted to go back to something you said about intention around why you start things, why you do things.
Yeah.
Like when I started my podcast, I have a solo show. I sit down
Mm.
and I talk about stuff. And I've had people
Yeah.
ask me why I do a solo show because every podcast consultant is like, well, if you did interviews, your show would grow so much faster because you get to capitalize on other people's audiences, right? We all know this. And I
Mhm.
was like, well, really, it's because one, I didn't actually embark on it as a growth strategy. Like
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
I started my podcast because I have a whole lot of stuff packed in my brain that is really only getting out to the people who pay me not small amounts of money. And that's actually a very small group of people. And a
Yeah.
podcast allows me to share what I know with as many people as want it. And that to me is like being a good steward of what I have spent 15 years learning. And I
Mhm.
am uninterested in making that exclusive. So that was my first intention. And my second was that I'm really lazy. And I knew for sure that my ADHD brain was definitely not going to tolerate having to schedule with more people. I mean, I'm a coach. I spend all day talking to people. Like the last thing I want to
Yeah.
do is, is make my podcast something that I have to talk to more people. And I knew that I wouldn't have the patience to do the editing and to make it good and then do all the promotion and send out all the stuff. Like there's so many friction points for somebody like me that I couldn't do that. It was just like I knew that I didn't have the capacity. So doing a
Yeah.
solo show meant I can just turn on my mic and talk. And that worked for me. And I really kind of didn't care how big it grew. I haven't ever actually worked at growing it. I sort of sit down and do my thing and it grows over
Yeah.
time. It grows. People
Well,
find it and it grows step by step, piece by piece over time,
yeah.
you know?
Well, and I think part of it is because you are very clear on your purpose.
Yeah.
It is to inform and to share information. And I know you also
Yeah.
talk about putting the best stuff out there. And
Oh,
even when they're the shorter topics, it's like, "Ooh, that's something to chew on," because lots of people aren't talking about some of
yeah.
these things. So, I think that makes a big difference. And the other thing I'll say in case people are like, "Ooh, I just need guests." If you're a podcaster, I would say, no offense intended to the current guest, but what I see, at least with most folks, is you get an initial bump from the people that also love Illana Burk.
Uh-huh.
But then those people don't always love Paula Jenkins. I mean, they
Right.
should, but so they don't always stick around for the next episodes. They
Yeah.
come in to hear you, but they don't necessarily stick around, and that's fine. I feel like that's a little bit of a myth that will always grow your show. You being on
Yeah.
other shows, though, that's a good one. So welcome.
Yeah.
I'm just
Well,
kidding. I'm just
thanks.
kidding.
My show is called Good Business with Illana Burk.
Go listen.
I'll say it like 7 more times. No, I won't.
Please do. I love it when guests do that. No. I'm
But it's
so
funny that you
glad that
said,
we know each other because
yeah.
this would be awkward, but otherwise this is hilarious to me.
Yeah. You mentioned that I talk a lot about putting your best stuff out there, and that is actually one of my most popular episodes is
Is
on my
it?
show was talking about, like, why it's absolutely essential to put your best work out to the world. And
Yeah.
it, like, warms my heart that my numbers are so high on that. Like,
Mm,
it's
yeah.
always those ones that, like, that I care a lot about that are kind of, like, niche-y, and I'm like, "People are gonna think I'm crazy for saying this." And then when a lot of people really dig it, that's, like, my happy place. So but it's really true, when I started, blogging was all the rage, and that's all anybody said was put your best stuff out there for free, and that will entice people to wanna hire you. And now
Yeah.
it's completely the opposite because content is like the volume of content you have to put out to get through the noise. It's just all about volume and it's not about quality. And quality breaks
Yeah.
through sometimes, but you usually have to do an incredible volume of high quality content in order to
Yeah.
break through. And that is really, really hard, but it's also like really, really essential because I think that as a lot of us that are more experienced and have been on the internet longer and have been in the internet business world longer and just the business world, frankly, like we're taking our knowledge base with us by only selling it. Like,
Yeah.
if we're only selling it, then that means that all of those Gen Z people and all of those, like, what are they calling the next one after that? Gen Alpha, that my little kid is.
Yeah.
Like, then they are left with an internet full of fluffy nonsense, full of people who are
And
batching
Skibbity
content
Toilet,
and you know,
which folks,
and it's
we can link
nonsense.
first
It's
we'll link
empty.
to your best content and then we'll link to the actual opposite, which is Skibbity Toilet. Like, what are we rotting their brains with? But I mean, that's a perfect point of
Yeah.
when we put out the best stuff, then it's there to be found
Yeah.
and grown
And
on
learn
and
from.
like
Yeah.
yes, and that's of service in a way that I think maybe not against TikTok, but when we're just putting out really short form stuff that's just a quick a skittle
Mhm.
type bite of things that
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, yes, it's entertaining, but I think there's something to be said for those of us that'll sink in and go for the better content, the better
Yeah.
conversations, the longer form. Because I wonder, does this create more of a community when we're willing to go a little bit deeper and be a little more vulnerable than here's my dance? I mean, there's nothing wrong with dancing, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
We have to have both. I mean, it's interesting because I
Yeah.
I finally just broke down and started TikTok, and because I am an
Mm.
overachiever, I was like, I started TikTok, and then I was like, actually, I should have 2 accounts because I
Well, link to
needed
both of them,
one
though.
for, like, big leadershipy stuff and one for, like, the tactical, here's how you deal with being a business owner stuff, because they just don't
Yeah.
always mix, and especially on TikTok where things need to be very, very specific. And
Yeah.
it's a trip, like, I'm doing little bite-sized pieces of content because that's the forum, and some of them, there's no rhyme or reason of, like, what hits and what doesn't. But what I have noticed
Yeah.
is a couple things that have really hit was actually, like, one conversation was happening today. I did a post about how deeply inspired I am by Gen Z and
Mhm.
how, like, they are really incredible, and if you aren't actually really inspired by them, then you are not somebody who's concerned about legacy leadership because
Yeah.
they are dealing with a lot and they are really hopeful and they're concerned about their mental health and they're struggling. And it is our job as elders. We are getting old, sorry, but as elders in our industry to nurture and nourish and help lift that up instead of criticize and tell them that they need to be on time for work every day and they have no work ethic. Like it's just garbage. And it's by far has been the conversation starter that, like, I've gotten to have, like, tons of people commented, and I've had these, like, really interesting conversations starting, and it's the first post I've put up that has garnered deep conversation, and it's been really interesting to see that there is actually a possible hybrid, even in these really short form pieces of content, where if you
Mm.
kinda go out on a limb and say real things, people do respond because I think a lot of people are really hungry for more depth on TikTok. I've been surprised. The things that I thought were the smartest and would be the least trafficked have been my highest volume posts so far. So that's encouraging to
Yeah.
me. I think the world's a little hungry for some more interesting intellectualism. That's my theory,
Glad you're sharing
non-scientific
that.
theory.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you're sharing that because obviously my assumption would have been different,
Mhm.
but I really appreciate what you're saying about maybe offering some of mentorship for Gen Alpha, whomever may be consuming it, because I mean, I work with a summer camp and
Mhm.
I get to work with their counselors and we're doing like a campaign together and I could offer to teach them a whole lot. And I think they just want to do their best work. So thank you for that. Cause I think
Yeah.
it's gonna be hard, especially if they're coming into the marketplace and they wanna be entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, feralpreneurs. They need they need a role model of how this
Yeah.
can be done because if they just listen to the big guys, it's like talking about getting into the NBA. There's only
Yeah.
one Mr. Beast spot. You can't duplicate it, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that so often too, like we look at them so differently because they have such a different life experience and we have so much that we can
Mm,
learn from them. I think about it all the time. Like
yeah.
my barrier to entry to TikTok, it took me like 3 years to like wind up to the plate to be like, "All right, I'm doing this shit. Like I'm going to put on the lipstick and I'm going to
Oops.
do the good videos and I'm going to do the thing." I had to like really work myself up to it, like to an insane
Yeah.
degree. But Gen Z is like a generation that has no barrier to entry for that because it so baked into their psyche and their culture that they can do everything faster than we can when it comes to self-promotion, but they
Yep.
don't have the experience to have like the meat behind it yet. So
Right.
it's like I want to combine those two places and get people talking to each other because I tell clients
Mm,
all the time. I have so many clients who are like, "I wish I had a younger audience." Their audience is aging, and they're like, but they won't go where that audience is because they feel like they're irrelevant or something, or it just feels hard. Like I couldn't possibly post 3 times a day. It's like these things that are barriers for them that are not barriers for younger people. Like they don't. It doesn't even occur to them for that to be a barrier. They're looking for how do I post more often? Where can I post
right.
more stuff? So it's like understanding those differences and going like, "Hey, I would love to help you get the knowledge and experience so that you can make that incredible skill of being able and willing to just jump out there and put yourself out there to the world and make it something really incredible." Like that seems like a pretty good idea to me. you
Yeah.
know?
And make it super authentic to like who they are because like I said, there is only one Mr. Beast. So if we're modeling
Yeah.
ourselves off of that or Joe Rogan or like whoever the thing like that would be more my age. That's not going to make the inroad.
Mhm.
I think that's really lovely and I'm glad you're bringing it up. I think
Yeah.
yeah, I'll give it a go. You talk me into TikTok. Okay. Okay. But I think there is also something there because it is so second nature. I mean, if you go into a classroom right now, most of the kids, probably 4th grade and up are like, "I wanna be a YouTuber." And you're like, "Really?
Uh-huh.
Like, that's okay, good,
Yeah.
let's do it." Like, maybe you guys can change the world and
Yeah.
figure it out. And if I can support that, I think that's a very different turn on it than just being dismissive. Like, so thank
Yeah.
you.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Yeah. Is there something we have not touched on that you would like to talk about? Like maybe the incubator?
I love that. What a lovely, encouraging plug. So, what it is it's a small group that for the first few minutes of each call, I record my podcast episode in front of the audience of the group. And then for the remainder of the call, we do live coaching. And sometimes we talk about the topics on the podcast, and sometimes we don't. It's just a really nice, like small, affordable space for people who maybe don't need one on one time with me, but like to have a touch point on a regular basis with other business owners. So what I didn't realize, I did it because if people are paying me, I will show up for things.
Yeah.
So for me, it was more so about just like I really needed to record my podcast on an ongoing and regular basis. So I created a mechanism that would make me do that because I can't always be left to my own devices and my own free will because, again, neurodiversity. Sometimes that's just not going to happen. So
Yeah.
Paula was the lovely human who pointed out, like, hey, that's like the most ingenious way to monetize your podcast ever. And I was like, oh my God, it is. I didn't even think about that. Like,
You cracked the code, friend.
the one thing I would really love to talk about is I'm doing a free program that's ongoing. So it doesn't matter when this airs, it doesn't matter when you listen to this. It's called Go for the No. And it's designed to help people who think visibility is a giant pain in the ass. We were just discussing some of those folks and who have all of the excuses and all of the reasons why they have not chased visibility, but know that they need it. We're putting them all together in a lovely space so you can sit around with a bunch of other negative Nellies and whine about how hard it is, but do it anyway.
Yep.
I am making no money on this. I am doing it because I see a need and a lot of people need help and support and understanding for how hard it is to put yourself out there. So, I would love it if people joined in. You can do that at thegoodbusiness.co. And like I said, it's totally free and there's no VIP version and there's no upsell and there's nothing to buy at all. In fact, you literally just have to show up. Oh, and the most fun part is it is called Go for the No because we are seeking rejection. That means we are gamifying rejection. At the end of each month, the people with the most rejections win fun prizes. So
That's the
we're
best.
incentivizing failure in the best way I could think of. And it's going really well. We just started. So we're about a week in and I've been getting great results and I would love to have more bodies in there because I think that it will make it even more fun the more people that we have. So that's my big I'm plugging that. My thing that I
I
make no
love
money
it.
on.
I signed up. And I'm gonna tell you, I am really like if I get my pitching cycle on, look out. Like I will get so many rejections or ignorals.
Ignorals. We are just inventing words today.
This is
Ignorals.
good.
I am
Ignorals.
using that one
It's like
in the
referrals,
marketing.
but
Ignorals.
ignorals.
I love
Please use
that.
it.
Oh
It
my
sounds
God.
like narwhal and it's fun to say.
It is
It,
ignorals.
it
I
goes in
love
go
that.
with the no. Go with the no.
Yes, it's going in. Put your ignorals here.
Ignorals. Because it's a thing.
Oh
I
God,
can't.
it's I started out by asking since people won't have pitched the first month yet, they're just getting started. I said that people can tell their worst like rejection stories.
Oh gosh.
I was not prepared for how bleak and sad these stories were going to
Oh
be.
no.
And it really has highlighted that beyond just the funniness of like, we're going to gamify rejection, there's like a real need for dealing with the grief and heartbreak of putting yourself out there and being ignored or being shut down. It was very apparent from even just the first few responses how traumatizing that is. And we don't talk about professional trauma nearly enough. So that's the next thing that I'm working on and Go for the No is finding mechanisms to create safety and healing for so that people can get out of their own way and they can put themselves out there more because there's so many good-hearted people who have so many good things to say and they're just doing it quietly and lamenting that not enough people have heard them. And so I want to change that. So that's what we're
That is
doing.
wonderful.
Thanks.
I will send you do you want me to share my funniest? It was actually a no. Or do you want me to just send it in?
Well, it's your show.
Okay, so we will I don't think I've ever shared this on the show,
Okay.
and it's funny. So I sent in a pitch because I was like, "Betty White. I would love to have Betty White." Of course, she's gone now. Rest in peace, Betty White. And I
That's
sent
a hell of
in
a
the
swing.
pitch.
I love
I
it.
know, and I always swing really big. That's the funny
Uh-huh.
thing. I mean, when I go for it. When I want celebrities, I usually it's like a grouping. Like, I'm like, "Let's just
I
go
was a
for
very
this."
hard get. I mean, let's be honest.
Bless your heart. Yes, you were. We had to reschedule. I mean, but so I sent this out to Betty White and I waited because lots of times if you're pitching a big person, she's
Mhm.
not big, but a very famous person, you don't, you get an ignoral or they reply when they reply. And
Mhm.
I finally got back in all caps from her longtime rep. So I know it was him. And he's like, "This
Yes.
will not work for Betty White." And I was like, sad panda.
I sincerely hope you still have that email.
I do. I do. It may not be all caps, the frameable.
That is like a screenshot.
The time I got rejected.
You may have just won this month. Like, that is a story. That is
Well, I'll send it in.
like,
If it's not
oh
all
my
caps,
God,
I'm
send it
sorry.
in. Oh,
In
it's
my
so good.
head,
In your head, it
it's
was
all
all
caps.
caps. I understand. If I was
It
rejected by
screamed
Betty White,
very
it would
loud.
feel screamy in my brain.
I mean, come on, Betty, get with the program. The story is actually funnier to me than not than
Mhm.
have. Well, it couldn't have been funnier than having her on, but it's worth it. It's worth it. Clearly, I was not wrecked or ruined by this.
Oh,
But no. Anyway, so in the spirit of wrapping this up,
yes.
because of course I don't want to go. You can come back anytime. It's a delight to have you, Ilana. I'm so glad that you joined me.
Me
Um,
too.
would you like to share 3 ways that you can think of to jumpstart joy in your life, in the world, or in other people's lives?
Oh, this question is way easier than the first question because
Yes.
I am in a stage in my life where I am jump starting a lot of joy. So number
Woo.
1 that I would say the best way to jumpstart joy, I highly recommend moving to Europe. I moved to Europe a year and a half ago. I live in Portugal now, and I can honestly say that it was the best thing I have ever done for myself or my family or my life or my ability to experience joy and happiness by far.
Mm,
And what I learned in that was that I was not crazy. American life is extremely stressful, like needlessly and painfully stressful. And moving
yeah.
to Portugal has really, not to put too fine a point on it, it has changed my ability to experience joy. And
Mm,
it's like when you don't centralize your work and your capacity to make money in all things that you do, and you're not surrounded by people who do that, things change rapidly. Like when it's considered passe to like go to a bar when you're talking to somebody, tell them what you do for a living. Like that's kind of rude here. Nobody
mm,
asks ever. Like I never talk about what I do. And now it's allowed me to have the capacity to take honestly more joy in what I do for a living again, which after 15
mm,
years, like burnout's a thing, I was getting tired. And it has reinvigorated my enthusiasm for what I do in a really big way. I mean, yes, I'm joking about move to Europe because I know obviously not everybody has the ability to pick up and move, but changing your circumstances however you can in ways that bring you more joy, that is the thing that I would recommend to all people. Life is short and
I love it.
things are hard right now for everybody everywhere. And doing what you can to surround yourself with people that increase your capacity to feel joy is yeah, do that, whatever that is. So I moved to
I love
Portugal.
it.
I'm never going back.
Ah. Well, and there might be a lot of people that join you in approximately 5 months.
Yeah,
I'm just
seriously.
kidding. I don't
It
even
is
know that they'll
quite the
have us,
exodus.
right?
I have
Yes.
had more than one internet buddy move here around the same time. Like
Mm.
I somebody I've known for a really long time on the internet. It was really funny. We discovered that we live a block from each other in Portugal.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
That's wild.
really wild. So it's yeah, it's a good place. And it's also a very funny place. The last thing I'll say about that is that it's extra joyful because it's like nobody seems to really pay attention to what's going on in the rest of the world all that much. And it's a
Mm,
place that is sort of like geopolitically inconsequential. It's something that's very different. Like living in the US, it's like the most, politically charged, like important targety kind of place. And living in Portugal, it's like it's not strategically interesting to anybody anywhere. So it's like
mm.
people just kind of chill here. It was one of the happiest things that we discovered. And having the experience of letting my nervous system calm down for the last year and a half of like going, oh, this is what it feels like to wake up and not be super stressed out all the time.
I'll try and find out. My mom's probably listening. No, I'm not moving to Portugal, but like I think finding that way, maybe even for ourselves in a different, like whatever that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds lovely.
Lower your expenses, move smaller, get a garden, whatever it is. Like
Right.
it's really pretty amazing when you have more capacity and time and less financial stress. And it's, yeah, I whatever you can do to do
Mm,
that is pretty great.
thank you. I love
Yeah.
that. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I mean, like, let's just keep going, but we'll just come back because this is
So
too
I'll
much
come
fun.
back next Friday and we'll do this all
Okay.
again. We can make it a
And
regular
we'll talk
feature. I love
about how you became a feralpreneur.
Yes.
Just kidding. Episode 2. Just kidding. Between dancer and feralpreneur. This is your new book. You're going to use this. This is good. This is
Yeah,
really
there we
good.
go. I love it. Well,
Okay.
thank
Well,
you
thank
so
you
much
so
for having
much.
me on, Paula. It was great. It was really fun. I'm so glad we finally did this, and it's been great
Me
watching your
too.
show come alive again. So it's a pleasure to be a part of it.
Ilana, thank you so much for joining me. It is such a treat to have you on. And truly, it's so amazing when I find people through the podcasting medium and then get to talk to them and get to know them. Such a treat to me. And so thank you very much for all of your guidance as I work on my own business. If you want to find out more about Ilana, you can go to illanaburk.com. And I'll have that link in the show notes. And if you want to find her podcast, Good Business with Illana Burk, or you want to find Go for the No, I will have those links in the show notes as well. If you're interested in joining me for a retreat on Saturday, August 17th, this is 2024 that we're talking about, I will put that link in the show notes. It is called Compassion Quest, and we're going to be talking about how to tap into self-compassion and self-care to find more joy in your everyday, which of course fits right in with most of what we talk about here. And it will be running from 9 to 4, and it's in Danville, California. So Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. If you live locally, I would love to see you there. Or, if you can find your way here, be a delight to see you. Next week on the show, we will be doing a solo cast. I imagine that I will be recapping a little bit of what we talk about at Compassion Quest. So tune in for that. And until then, I hope that your days are filled with so much joy.